Welcome to Healthcare Hour with Colleen Qvist. Thanks so much for all your messages in the week. I'm so enjoying hearing from you. And it's also fun for me when it's South African people, but it's also all over the world. So yes, wherever you are in the world, hello from me. And you're going to meet my lovely guest just now. But first, let me tell you about Healthcare Hour with Colleen Qvist. It is all about healthcare professionals. It's about us understanding that healthcare professionals are actually people. They're not robots. They have families. They would like to have breaks. They would like to actually eat something every now and again. But they often don't get that. And often they prioritize everybody else's health above theirs. It's also important for us to improve the relationship between the healthcare professional and the patient, and of course the patient's family. And at some point, we all get to be patients, whether we like it or not. And so it's important then as well that we take ownership of our own health, our ownership of our own choices, and that we don't just sit like little sacks of potatoes on the couch, as you know, I always describe it as. Yes, so after the break, we're going to meet my guest, but first, let's go for that break.
The home of inspiration every day.
Most people give up on themselves easily. You know the human spirit is powerful.
From news,
countries across the globe have been hit by the COVID-19 virus.
Views.
There's a global trend to see an increase in GBV incidences, specifically domestic violence.
Sports.
What's he say? It's a really good ball. It's Shabalala.
And music to inspire you every day. This is Vuka Online, your inspiration radio station.
Welcome back. You're listening to Healthcare Hour with Colleen Qvist. My guest today is Dr. Annemarie Lombaard, and she is a thought leader and subject expert on sensory neuroscience. And she's got more than 30 years of global experience in this subject. So hi, Annemarie, welcome.
Hi, Colleen. Lovely to be here.
Thank you for joining us. And as I said before the show started, of course, on this show, we don't just do subject experts, we do people. So let us hear about you. Who is Annemarie?
Okay, brilliant. So I live in Cape Town, South Africa. I am married to a George Clooney lookalike. He really does look a little bit like
okay.
Clooney.
Yummy. Okay.
Lucky girl, am I? I've got two sons. They are out of the house, so I'm struggling with empty nest syndrome. One is in the States. He graduated as a winemaker, and the other one is studying engineering. So I'm really lonely in my house, working from home. Feel very sorry for myself that I don't have enough activity around me. I've got two dogs who keeps me happy. And then, I'm an avid trail runner, maybe more trail shuffler. I don't do the fast running stuff anymore, but I'm on top of Table Mountain every Saturday. I love trail running, love to read, and love to stay busy. And obviously, I am a little bit of a workaholic, and the business has been a large part of my life. But thanks for keeping me human, because I certainly am. And it really is about people. Our work is about people and understanding people. So that's a bit about me.
Okay, awesome. Yes. So it's always good as well to do the movement, as we change, as we whatever, sometimes we lose that whole, my body doesn't move anymore. And you think, where did it go to? But it slowly disappears with time. So yay for you that you are doing trail running.
Absolutely. And as I'll explain to you, movement is one of your 7 senses, and it is our biggest self-regulation sense. Self-regulation is how do we use the senses in order to keep our bodies focused, activated, and organized. And obviously, movement is also medicine. That's a really well-earned saying. And I try to stay active because moving our bodies is really so critical for our health and well-being in general. For me, it's a little bit of health 101. Movement is a health 101 principle as far as I'm concerned. And it also fits under the sensory intelligence umbrella very, very well.
Okay. All right. So we obviously talk about emotional intelligence, where people never heard of emotional intelligence, but now it's almost like, no, EQ is better than IQ. And I think it's not so much as them being better. It's about, you need them. And of course, now you're talking about sensory intelligence and it being neuroscience. So talk to us about what is sensory intelligence?
Okay, brilliant. And that's such a good question to ask. So, sensory intelligence is firstly the understanding. So, it's the insight and the understanding of the fact that all of us have seven senses that actually process the environment on a day-to-day basis, every single minute of the day. What does it do to your brain? What does it result into? So, we use our seven senses to think, to learn, to act, to live. Whatever we do has a sensory origin. So it's kind of the feeders into the brain. But then also correlating it with emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is fabulous, and it is neuroscientifically positioned around brain hierarchy. And the brain is really, really complex. But we know emotional intelligence happens in the limbic system, which is the middle section of the brain. Sensory intelligence focuses more on what happens at the lower, more primitive part of the brain, the lower part, because that's where information enters. So first, the body and the brain will perceive and sense what is happening around us. What do we see? What do we hear? What do we feel? What do we smell? How do we move our body? How do we adjust our body? So that's the initial intake, and it gets processed through very particular functions within the brain center on a more primitive level. And there is, there's a lot of terminology around that I don't want to necessarily repeat. But that filtering first happened before it moves into the limbic system where there's an emotion, and then it moves up to the executive brain for thinking and action. So sensory intelligence, the seven senses, the primitive brain, how do the brain initially sense? And does it create comfort or discomfort, irritation, or focus and attention? And the way that we process the senses have a direct impact on how we focus and attend to information around us. It does have an impact on our emotion. Sensation and emotion are forever married. And then also it has an impact on our thinking and our doing. So if you want to just see the brain as our central processing system, the input to get into that system go through the sensory pathways. And then the output is obviously, what are we doing with it? How do we act? How do we task? How do we action? And how do we think and plan and strategically use our body and our brain? So hopefully that gives you some sort of understanding.
Yeah. I think I can just hear my listeners saying, hey, seven senses. We only learn five senses at school.
Absolutely. So that's always a question. That's how we do it. So the five senses are the obviously ones: visual and auditory, seeing and hearing. By the way, those are also our information senses. And we work really, really hard with these two senses on a day-to-day basis, particularly people who do a lot of screen and computer work or remote working or home working. So we talk a lot about digital fatigue, and digital fatigue is because our eyes and our ears work so hard to process.
Yes.
Then the next three, touch, smell, and taste, I group them and call them the social senses. Touch is my favorite sense. Think about it comes from your skin. We've got skin from the top of your head right down to the soles of your feet. And your skin is where does your body end and the world begins. So it is our intimacy and our connection sense. Very, very important for social engagement. Also very important for intimacy. Think if you hug someone or hold them, there's a lot of touch processing that occurs between two individuals or groups. So it's really, really important. And then smell and taste are our chemical senses, what goes through the nose or the mouth. It really does feed a lot into our food and how do we spend time with social eating, but then also smell, the preferential sense of the brain. It gives us immediate impact on emotion and memory because it's got a hot line through to the limbic system. Those are the five senses, and just briefly what they are from a day-to-day basis. The two that's more unfamiliar to people are our two movement senses.
Okay.
And they've got some fancy names, but I will give the fancy names, but explain to you how it works. One is the vestibular system. That's actually located in your inner ear, right next to your auditory system. And your vestibular system, you've got one on your right and one in your left ear, and it gives you feedback around gravity, balance, and moving your head. So it's kind of a little bit like your body's GPS. So the vestibular system will tell you, are you upright or you down? Do you need to sit up straight on your chair? And those of us who get car sick or seasick, it's that system that's actually being not processing as fast or as fluidly as it needs to. There's nothing wrong with that. It just means you've got low threshold for the vestibular system, so your brain is prone to get overloaded or irritable around that. And the vestibular system work very closely in conjunction with proprioception. That's the seventh sense. And proprioception is located in our muscles and our joints. And every time when we move a muscle or a joint, the brain gets proprioceptive feedback and giving you a body sense, your positioning sense. For instance, the ability for you to walk downstairs or walk upstairs or move your body, you are actually using your gravity and your balance from the vestibular system, and you combine that with how do you move your body forward from the feedback that your proprioceptors give you on your body sense. So it really is navigating us in space quite extensively. But we're very, I think, unaware of our movement senses because it works so much in the background. But really, really important because it also is then our regulation sensors. We use movement really, really well to calm your brain, to create more attention and focus. We all know if you sit too long, like your attention would drop and you would start to do less work or you struggle more, then actually getting up and moving will activate these two senses. So they're really, really prominent in self-regulation. We call it self-regulation. And we believe self-regulation through the senses, which is this bottom-up process. So we use the senses to influence the human brain. And that helps us to get more focused, more alert, more organized. It helps us to be more calmer. It can even help us to manage our anxiety or when we're feeling overloaded. So the important thing is to identify, are you overloaded and what do you need to do to curb that overload? Which sense is being overloaded and what sense can you use to actually manage that amount of overload?
Okay. All right. So it sounds very fascinating. I'm glad that we've now got two more senses than what we traditionally learned. Yeah, I think at this point, let's go for a break. When we come back, we're going to find out, okay, so what happens to these sensors? You've spoken about them becoming overloaded. How are we aware? And I'm sure you know, in this fast-paced world, sometimes people don't even know if they've been to the bathroom or not, let alone what's going on with the sense. But let's go to a break.
How do you know the life of personal coach you're about to work with is who they say they are? How do you know if they can do the job? At the Africa Board for Coaching, Consulting and Coaching Psychology, we can tell you. So, before you share your secrets and spend your money, check with us first. Visit www.abccccp.com or call us on 012-751-7608. The ABCCP, the professional body for coaches.
Welcome back. You are listening to Healthcare Hour with Colleen Qvist. My guest today is Dr. Annemarie Lombaard, and she is a thought leader and subject expert on sensory neuroscience. And she's got more than 30 years experience. And she's been telling us 5 senses. No, we've actually got 7. So she's added 2 for movement. One that's in your ear on either side, and the other one that when we move, it sends the signal back to the brain as to saying, hey, what's going on here? Can you walk up the stairs? Are you walking down the stairs? So, Annemarie, you obviously do a lot of work with business people, with corporate people, with healthcare professionals. What does that work look like?
Okay, that's such a good question, Colleen. So firstly, one thing that I think I've omitted to say, I am an occupational therapist and I've done my PhD, obviously, studying call centers, believe it or not. So I went into a call center, which is a really good description of why this work is so important. And I looked at that and I thought, oh my goodness, they expect people to work here because it looks like a beehive now. It's crazy. Yes. It's noisy and it's sound and it's people sitting on top of each other. So the premise in a lot of the work that we do is we profile people. We determine what are your sensory thresholds.
Yes.
They're all born with our sensory thresholds. It's not something that you choose to do or you become, it's part of your kind of your DNA. So a lot of the work that we do an assessment, you measure your sensory threshold to then realize, oh, for instance, you can't work in a call center. If you've got low thresholds and you're sensitive to noise and people in your space and visual and smells, and touch from a seating point of view, you're really going to struggle to work in a call center. For
Yes.
instance, you can do a meeting in a coffee shop, and people will say there's no way I'm doing a meeting in a coffee shop, because sometimes a coffee shop would be too busy. You can't sit there, you should rather sit somewhere else. So the work that we do, assessing people, and then are you using the best environment to live, to work in order to actually be the best version of yourself. So we kind of do this match between personal thresholds individually. How does your brain process? Your brain is this processing machine of the senses. And then have you actually matched your work environment, and then often your home environment or your social environment even also into that particular space. So we
Yes.
do a lot of training the trainers. So there's a lot of therapists, coaches, psychologists, counselors, social workers, anyone with a good, solid human behavior background that go through our training. So we're training the trainer, and people utilize our work when they work with anxiety, depression, or neurodiversity, or autism, or ADHD. So there's a whole variety of mental health problems, or certain areas where people work with a diagnosis, where our practitioners would actually utilize our assessments and the work into the healing and therapeutic process. That's the one part of the work that we do. But the work that we do as a group is mostly focused around corporate clients who wants to use this as a methodology, firstly, to help them to understand their teams better. So it's all
Yes.
around teamwork, team relationship, team communication. For instance, we know people with low thresholds who are more sensitive. They, for instance, would prefer to have an email conversation or a Slack or a web chat conversation as opposed to a face-to-face conversation or even a telephonic conversation. So we help people in a team element to match behavior according to your thresholds. And it's often, wow, I didn't even know that about myself. For instance, there are people touch-wise that's got a big body space. Don't even shake their hands or don't touch them, because people get really, their primitive brain goes into overdrive and they get really anxious about that. So there's a lot of dynamics around how people function and work together as a team, which is, for instance, my favorite work to do, because I think relationships are fabulous in shifting forward, understanding the sensory threshold and the sensory intelligence key to it. Secondly, we work with a lot of people around burnout, stress. How do I manage stress and anxiety in the workplace? And we also obviously provide very pragmatic, practical, and effective, easy strategies to utilize to manage their level of stress overload and also distraction, which we then bring into more of a productivity zone. If, for instance, you've got low auditory thresholds, and you've got notifications on your phone that keeps on pinging or blaring or screaming,
Yes.
please just switch it off. So,
Yeah.
and I sometimes think people are not really aware of it. A lot of what the work that we do is very unconscious, because we are talking about the primitive, more unconscious brain. So we really
Yes.
empower people to understand what works for me and what doesn't work for me and why.
Yeah.
People always come back and they say, wow, for the first time, I really understand what is happening. There's nothing wrong with me. This is just how I wired. So the corporate work is more around groups, but then we also would do individual work. So I design an assessment, the sensory matrix. You will complete it, you will get a result, and then, what type of activity should you be doing? What kind of habits can we predict? What's the best environment for you? What are your stress risks? Because there's a lot of data and study and science to correlate how your brain processes senses against a wide variety of stress-related risks or illnesses. So that's then normally how we do it. The other thing that's quite interesting, there's a nice shift in inclusive design. So any architects or workplace designers who are thinking about
Wow. Okay.
designing workspaces so that they're more conducive for performance, productivity, and well-being, that's a fabulous emerging field, which we are also involved in helping people to look at the space, so be centrally informed when we design workspaces, but then go a level further, be centrally inclusive. What are the people that we have in this workspace? If we understand their thresholds, then we can map them in that space much better. For instance, who should sit in a corner? Who should sit right in the middle? Who
You
should
should
not?
sit next to the loo.
Exactly, or not next to the loo if you are smell
Yeah.
sensitive. So it's
Yes,
really
true.
flexible.
Yeah.
Exactly, or not next to the kitchen.
Yes.
For instance, people with low touch thresholds, which is absolutely normal. So many people shouldn't be sitting with their back to a moving passage where people keep on
Yeah.
moving
Because
behind
then
them.
they
It
sense that
creates
whole,
They do,
yeah.
and it impacts on their focus, their attention, and they have got a low level of anxiety because not knowing that someone might be touching them from behind, which happens unconsciously. So put them in the corner with their back against the wall. This is an example. I mean, there's millions of these examples that we apply with people right across the board, but it is what are your thresholds? So we measure your sensory thresholds across all your seven senses. What are your threshold? What are the insights that you get from it? In other words, does this explain some of your habits, your behaviors? And often people say, I've got these funny quirks. No, it's just, you are the result of how your brain and your body has been wired in your responses to the environment. And then thirdly, I think that's just the occupational therapist in me. We're very practical with strategies. What do you now do with it? It's not just
Yeah.
something that you need to understand and know. How are you going to change this? What are you going to do? And we provide strategies for work, we provide strategies for home, and then we give a lot of what we call self-regulation tools, bottom up. We call it sensory snacks, sensory diet, sensory economics. Sensory snacks is, for instance, I always have a water bottle next to me because by drinking water, I'm using my mouth and I fill my bladder and then I walk. So I've got three self-regulators in one. Quick things that we can do to keep our brains regulated and alert and focused. Sensory diet, not what you eat. What are the activities that you should be doing? For instance, my table mountain on a Saturday morning fits my sensory identity. So it fits my sensory thresholds. And by doing that, it's a very good stress regulator for me on a sustainable basis. And then sensory ergonomics is what should you change in your environment? Maybe you should change your lighting. Maybe you should change the view of your desk. Maybe you should change your digital filing, or change your notifications or your screens. So these are the three levels of strategies that we help people to just match your world and your environment based on your sensory needs.
Yeah, Annemarie, while you've been talking, I'm sort of like thinking, okay, now what am I? What am I? And I can see like I'm more auditory of switch the music off. Oh, I've got to find somewhere. No, switch the radio down. And then, for instance, my husband, his keys on his cell phone make a sound every time he touches one of them, and it drives me nuts. So,
Absolutely.
yeah,
That's such a good explanation of that. And you are saying it's driving me nuts.
yes,
That's what we hear with people from a relationship point of view because they've got such opposing sensory needs that it creates conflict.
yeah,
And then they start to blame. It becomes a very personal thing. And if you understand, but it's not you, it's the noise of your keys when you type
yes.
on your
I
cell
could
phone.
like,
It kind of screams in your brain. And that's the reality. People who's really sensitive, it's like these sensory stimuli is screaming in your brain. So it's
yes,
very overloading and it drives you nuts.
yeah,
People get irritable, they get annoyed, they get anxious, they get angry. And then there's a response. And back at the ranch, you don't know that's actually not the person. It's really the sensory stimulation within that environment that's being generated by that interaction is overloading your brain.
yeah.
So it's an amazing tool to help people to understand each other. But I think your explanation has been absolutely spot on. We hear it
Yeah,
so
I was
often.
just I was just plotting me in the whole story of going, okay, where am I? Where am I? Yeah. Whereas my
Yeah,
daughter, for instance, is a don't touch me kind of person.
exactly.
She's got to be very she has to want you to touch her, and then she can come cuddle, but
Yeah.
don't just decide for her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Touching on her terms, which is very
Yes.
typical of people with low touch thresholds because it's not that they don't want to touch or they can't, but they need to have a sense of control in that,
Yeah.
which is absolutely very normal. But then also you can have low touch thresholds, but have, for instance, high movement thresholds, which
Yes.
means I don't want to touch, but I really need to move. Then also, are you choosing the right activity as a result? I'll give you a simple example. Should people go I'm going to use an example of trail running versus road running. Road running is very monotonous and it's similar. Now, listen to me, monotonous. So I'm actually being judgmental there, but it's even, that's my cognitive bias coming in here. Road running is you're just doing the same action over and over again. That's suited to one type of profile.
Yes.
Trail running is very different. It keeps on changing. Then you have to go over a rock, then you have to go here. So the variations are very, very different. And you would be interested to see that one type of profile would prefer road running and another one would love to do trail running because the sensory experiences that you get is very different.
And just before we go for a break, so I mean, I'm imagining you on your trail run. So you're then saying your vestibular system probably then works more because it's like, okay, don't topple her over the rock, make sure she balances and goes around the corner and over the hill.
Yeah, absolutely. And then also in trail running, also the proprioceptive system is very, very actively at work as well. Yeah. So, then you unpack all of those activity and you match the activity to your sensory threshold, which is quite fascinating. And then we do stuff that we intuitively love, that works for us, that we enjoy, and then it's sustainable. I can't tell you how many people I've talked out of going to the gym. I would read these scores because remember, we map all of those 7 scores and then no, you shouldn't be going to the gym because the gym is smelly, busy, noisy. It's often cramped.
Judgmental.
Yeah, again. But then people hate the gym and then they feel so guilty that they're not going to the gym. I'm like, the gym is not the right environment for you. Find another environment to do exercise. Don't stop moving. Definitely don't stop moving, but find a different environment to move in.
Yeah. Okay, let's go for a break. It's funny. It's funny. I'm seeing the whole show in pictures of people running up and down and moving, but we're going to go for a break. Okay.
The Africa Center for Work-Based Learning is a professional development center for professionals who aim to improve their professional standing. This means that the learning programs we run are more than just academic programs. They are work-based programs that focus on leveraging your current experience as a professional to build your overall profile. A year down the line, the Africa Center for Work-Based Learning is developing into a preferred center for professional development in Pretoria, with 8 professional development faculties including accounting, teaching, entrepreneurship, as well as IT and many more. For more information, go to acwbl.org or dial +27 12 751 7608. The Africa Center for Work-Based Learning, where work is learning.
Welcome back. You are listening to Healthcare Hour with Colleen Qvist. My guest today is Dr. Annemarie Lombaard, and we've been having a fun time examining different senses. And apparently we got 7 senses, not only 5. And what we're talking about is sensory neuroscience and how we may not be aware. Where I used the example, for instance, where my husband's cell phone, whenever he presses keys, they make sounds. And, and you like look at him as if to say, like, do you really have to type, hello, how are you? And it makes a sound for each one. But yes, so I'm sure that a lot of business people are listening to us now and then thinking, okay, is this just another thing we're going to have to sort out and work out? And, this whole inclusivity story of no, it just makes more hoops for us to jump through. What's the benefit to the CEO listening to us who sends, do you send your people on, let's go do this analysis? What are we going to do with it? And what's the return for them?
Yeah. Colleen, I think that's obviously always an important question to ask. And I think, look, if there's, I'll be very honest, the more progressive type of organizations that's really interested in, they can see the value of people development are obviously our best clients to work with. Because, training and people development are a big piece of where there's money being put aside from a corporate point of view, and there are budgets for that. Because the reality is, if you want to think about it, you have to drive your car and you have to take it in for petrol and you've got to fill it up and you've got to check the the services and make sure it's okay. I mean, people are very similar to that. So it's a little bit of a service that you would give and provide for people. If the bottom line is, if people struggle with these or it impacts them, the reality is that they will be more distracted. So there's a productivity loss. People make more mistakes. They've got less energy. They don't manage their time that well because of the potential distractions. And ultimately, there's a loss in performance and productivity, and you don't get the best benefit out of your employees. So for me, that's just an absolute bottom line, no-brainer type of a benefit. How can we help people to be more productive? And the reality is, the world is in total chaos and overload. We are bombarded with stuff that we need to do. Everyone is multitasking. Everyone is under pressure. We always have to provide and produce more than what I think sometimes is humanly possible. So it's about optimizing people's energy, their time, and their focus. And we can do that if we help people to take away the bottom line irritations, distractions, and stuff that's really impacting the fact that we can't have a clear brain to work with. So for me, that's absolutely a no-brainer. Remove those distractions, help people to understand them, but also let them take ownership. We're not there to baby people. Come on, be an adult, learn this about yourself, and make the necessary changes. I'll never forget, I worked with a big group once, followed up with the HR manager, and 4 years later, he said, Annemarie, after your workshop, my life totally changed. I understood myself, what was irritating me, where did my stress and my anxiety come in. I've put my phone on mute, and I've built in 15 minutes between my meetings, and my world has changed as a result. Now, is it possible to put your phone on mute and to build 15 minutes in between your meetings? Yes. If you can't do that, then I don't know where you are from. So those are possible, but purely by doing those simple, easy, practical adaptations, he was significantly more productive. And we do case studies. We've worked with a client that went just before COVID, they went into an online remote working role in their business, and they wanted us to work with them, high performance connected culture. And we've been working with them for 5 years now. And in the first year that we work with them, we actually had a collective increase in their KPIs by 129%. So we've increased significantly the KPIs of how people were performing, how well they were showing up at work, and their level of production. That's purely just looking at productivity. How do you impact relationships? If a team works together better, faster, and they produce better quality of work, the business is going to win. And then the other one, which I think, and I'm glad we're talking about healthcare here, Colleen, because the reality is people are in burnout. There is a lot more anxiety. People are not resilient. And I think it's a little bit of just the times that we are in now. And I think the world looks very different to what it did quite a few years back. But helping people to manage burnout, because burnout is very costly. If you think of people get into a disability route, you want to try to get people returned to work, just figure out that healthcare cost involved. It's massive. We also know the latest stats show that mental health and associated costs is going to cost the world economy $6 trillion $6 trillion by 2030.
We don't even know how many zeros there is.
Exactly. So the point is, mental health or poor mental health is costing an organization money, maybe more indirectly, but if they start to map out productivity, absenteeism, presenteeism, these things has an absolute impact on the bottom line. So from that point of view, if an organization wants to improve productivity, performance, team relationships, and high performance, this is a way to do it. And I think what is nice about the work that we do, I love it. It's not judgmental. There's no judgment in it. It's fun. We work with a fun concept. It's interactive. We talk about a sensory tree. Are you a root, a trunk, or a leaf? It becomes dialogue and kind of conversation starters for teams going forward. And it's just a great way for
Now I
people.
want to know, am I a root, a trunk, or a leaf? I've got to go find out. Yes.
You better find out. Yeah.
Yes.
So I just
So what
think,
I'm hearing you,
yeah,
Annemarie, is you saying that it's not like let's bulldoze the open plan office. It's about
not
how
at
does
all.
each person become self-aware of what their triggers are.
Yeah, exactly.
What is not serving them. And another example from my life is years gone by. My cell phone used to have a red flashing light when there was a message. And that was also like, no, 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 because
Yeah,
it kept on saying, come on, come look at
yeah.
me, what's going on here? And so of course, when you've got the new cell phone that doesn't have the red flashing light, it's like, oh, peace.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I raised my case. So, because remember, the brain is constantly absorbing information from the environment.
Mm.
And no, we're not going to bulldoze the open plan office environment. Of course not, because that is a reality. We're
Yes.
going to maximize the open plan office environment. But if you don't want to do this, you're missing opportunity to actually get people to work more productively, because we want to remove and minimize unnecessary distractions. And people do not know what these inherent distractions are, and they draw away from focus and attention. People can't work longer periods of time, they don't have focus, they lose energy, and then time becomes an issue. So it directly influence the capacity that we have to stay task focused.
Yes.
The other thing that we are very passionate about is hybrid working. So it might be a little bit of a different discussion, but we are very, very supportive of hybrid working. We don't want just home working, because I think home working, there's unfortunately a risk of becoming more isolated and lonely.
Yeah.
But we do love the fact that people don't want to return to office, all of their staff, because having flexibility with some home working and some office working just makes perfect sense in my mind. Because when you
Yeah.
want to collaborate, you want to be with people who are in the office, but then also working from home mean people have got less distraction and the environments are a lot more manageable. But then also, how do you do it? You know,
Yeah.
some people need to be more in the office. The high threshold sensory leaves love to be more in the office. The low threshold sensory roots love to have more time working from home, because that's the most productive space.
Yeah.
So that's really about matching
Yes.
people
So
to
really
their space.
fascinating. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so it sounds like there's lots to unpack, lots to understand, lots to but just listening to you, it's almost like, oh, I'm going to go find out what's me, what am I? So how do people contact you? And is it possible to be an individual or do you have to be a team?
Yeah, absolutely. No, anyone can go onto our website, www.sensoryintelligence.com. We've got a free sensory quiz, which is just a little bit of a playing around version. But then you can also go through the full comprehensive version and complete a sensory matrix online. That's the assessment that I've designed off from my PhD journey. And that's open to anyone. So you can literally go do it online. It's all automated. You will get a report, 26-page report. I know it's quite a lot, but I love it. It gives you a lot of information, and you
Yes.
will learn a lot about yourself just in that report. You have an option to spend time with one of our practitioners that can take you through the results. But often people say, purely by reading through it, it gives you a bit of a DNA blueprint. That's enough for them. And then if people also obviously want us to work with teams or groups, all of our detail is on our website. They can just reach out to us. If a client would contact us, I always do a proper needs analysis to figure out what do they want, what is happening. And for instance, we wouldn't take on a client if we feel we can't make a difference. So then I will do a needs analysis and figure out what does this client need. And then we usually bespoke a particular service for them. We don't really use off-the-shelf stuff. We do have themes that we work with, but we usually always make it customized for a particular client. Those are for teams. But anyone is available to go on the site and do their own sensory matrix at any time. It's all automated.
Okay, so thank you. So we now have got everyone rushing off to the website to go and do that quiz. And yes, thank you so much for joining me.
Well, thanks, Colleen. It was lovely, and keep up the good work.
Thank you. Yes. Okay, so you've been listening to Healthcare Hour with Colleen Qvist. My guest, Dr. Annemarie Lombaard, has been here to share just a little bit with sensory intelligence with us, which is quite fascinating. I'm looking forward to hearing from you as to what kind of sensory intelligence you have. Of course, we've got 7 of them, but like, where are your thresholds? What are the little things that are annoying you? Please also remember that you're loved, you matter, and you're not alone. And I'll see you all next week.